Welcome to Spiritual Changemakers, the podcast that guides you through tough times with practical tools and inspiring stories. I'm Andrea Thomas, your host and the Sacred Transitions Coach. Join us as we hear from spiritual changemakers who have connected with their higher power and overcame adversity. Whether you are navigating a difficult transition or seeking to deepen your spiritual practice, our podcast provides guidance to help you find magic in the change. Come on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation with us and unlock your potential to become your best self. Welcome, my beautiful souls, on a new podcast episode on Spiritual Changemakers. And today I'm coming with a new guest to bring on a topic that I would say we haven't really had on this podcast. And once I got to read about Riana, get to know her work, I was like, oh yeah, I think you guys are really gonna enjoy this conversation that we are about to have today. And we are going to talk about how do we clear patterns? How do you claim your power? And really the spiritual path to extraordinary love and alignment. And I want you to help me welcome Riana. So welcome, Riana. So excited to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and for those that are new to her, maybe you never heard about Riana and never came across her, I just want to introduce her a little bit so you know who are you listening to today. And she is a board-certified neurosomatic practitioner and creator of the Clear to Create method. She helps high-achieving women who have incredible lives, the career, the family, the friendship, the lifestyle, all of it, yes. But they still find themselves repeating the same relationship patterns. And through her unique blend of neurosomatic practices, NLP, and quantum time release, Riana guides women to clear what's been holding them back so they can finally claim extraordinary love that just matches the life they've built. So welcome, Riana. I would love for us to start with you sharing a little bit about yourself and how did you get to do this work that you are doing today?
Absolutely. I think all of us in this space, we all have a story. We all have a journey. I think, so I grew up, I was born in Maui. My parents divorced when I was 2. My father moved to California. My mom and I moved back to Minnesota where she was from. So I grew up single mom. My grandparents were my anchors. They were amazing, Grammy and Bumpy. I could not have had 2 more amazing, incredible souls in my life. And so my dad wasn't really around much of my life. So I went off to college at 18 and he said, listen, I didn't help you. I didn't help your mom. I want to take care of your room and board freshman year of college. I'm like, okay, amazing. So I go off to college, doing my thing, couple months in, the housing people call and say, hey, listen, the bill was never paid and you're maxed on loans. And so I had to tap into that part of me where I was like, either do I have to leave school, or do I tap into that part that we all have, but we forget of being resourceful, right? And so I left campus. I got 3 jobs. I rented a 5-bedroom house and filled the other 4 bedrooms and figured it out. Who rents a house to an 18-year-old is beyond me. Anyway, but I think that was the first time, and not that I could have articulated it, but where you really start having evidence or start having those internal subconscious conversations about, why don't I matter enough for you to keep your promise, or to put me in this position at 18 to now have to go figure this out and just, being blindsided by it. Fast forward, I got married at the ripe old age of 23. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. You're a baby at 23. You don't know who you are and who you aren't. My daughter's about to turn 22 next month. And I mean, there's just no way. Like she's still a baby. Anyway, we were young. And also I knew even before we got married that there was something that wasn't quite right. But I was certain that this was the right thing and that I was going to be old and alone forever. And that, I was getting married. So it was a very lonely marriage, lots of heartache there in a lot of ways. And then we separated when Maddie was 6. And that was kind of the next turning point, because we had this beautiful agreement about what this first year of our divorce was going to look like for her. Focus be on her, not bringing other people into the mix, etc. So we had this lovely conversation at mediation on a Friday. And then she went to spend the weekend with him. And I called her the next day because she wasn't feeling well. And she said, oh, Daddy's friend and her daughter are here and we're making Easter eggs. And
Yeah.
I was just like, huh. So it went from all of this that we had just agreed to the day before to clearly there had been a relationship going on during our marriage. So it turned from calm and peaceful to volatile and horrific. And, I just became this protective mama bear, and it was awful. So that went on for, a good 2-3 years. And then about 3 years after my divorce, and so backing up, when I got divorced, I did the things that we're always told to do, right? I did all the things. I talked about it in therapy. I talked about it with my girlfriends. I read the books. I journaled. I did meditation. I, did the
You
Brene
had a
Brown weekend.
lawyer.
Yeah, I did all the things. And while all of that is beneficial, it doesn't actually heal you or move you forward. Oftentimes that it keeps you stuck in the story, right? But again, in that time, I would never have been able to articulate that. So my father had been, back a little bit more in my life as an adult. And so at that 3-year mark, roughly, he came to visit in Minnesota. And Maddie and I at the time were living in this little farm cottage in a river town in Minnesota that separated Minnesota from Wisconsin. And we had horses and we had chickens and we had a pond that in the summer we would dye every weekend. So it looked like the ocean. I mean, it was very sweet. We had a garden, but it was cold, and I am an island baby and I am a beach baby. And so I was over the winter. So when he came and said, listen, I think it's the perfect time for you guys to move to California and you can come and take over this family business. I'm going to go do some other stuff. And Maddie can grow up in California and it's going to be great. And at the time, my mom had just had a surgery on her neck and they nicked a nerve, and she did nails for a living and she couldn't use her right arm. And so she was obviously not in a place where she could, care for herself. So I said, well, I can't leave my mom. I'm not leaving the horses, and I'm only going to disrupt Maddie's life once. She was 9 years old at the time. I moved around a lot as a child, and it didn't, you don't have that sense of just being able to relax. You're kind of on edge, and there's anxiety and there's uncertainty. And so I said, so I'm not going to move on a whim for some big pie in the sky idea that you have. And he's like, nope, I promise you the capital is there. You take it, you run with it. So against everything that I knew to be right, and against, all of the inner pits in my stomach and my best girlfriends saying, you cannot do this, you cannot trust him. And it wasn't even like red flags. It was like I took out the biggest billboard that you could ever imagine in Times Square, and it was screaming at me don't do this. But guess what? I did it. So I packed up, my mom, my daughter, the horses. Somebody came and got the horses and moved them in California, and my father built a barn for them. And the first couple months felt like a fairy tale. I was getting into the business, and clearly there was so much stuff that had been missed, and I was excited about what I was going to do with it. And, we were 20-minute drive from the beach, and this kind of fantasy of having this relationship with my dad and my mom, and they were friends, and we all had family dinner. It was great. I also had a pit in my stomach that I couldn't name. And then 6 or so months in, it was December 1st. So Maddie's birthday was the day before. She turned 10. And my father had left to go, the girlfriend of the moment, to drive her back to South Dakota or some silly thing. And I was in the studio, and this man had come to take these mailers for holiday because there was something he did with them last year when he worked there and whatever. So he was picking them up. And all of a sudden I heard this noise, and I look out into the front of the studio, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by agents, guns drawn, pointed at me and put in handcuffs. And I was completely, obviously floored. And, we're not going to spend the time of all the details, but they had been, they had been watching stuff. There was illegal stuff that they, were thinking was going on. They asked me if I had packed a particular box. They had coordinated with my UPS driver. And at the time, I only packed the orders that were for my clients through Sky Mall magazine. I don't know if you remember that a million years ago, Delta Airlines. You would get on the air before online shopping was a thing, or before it was a really big thing. It's like a catalog. So when you're on the plane, you could order stuff. So anyway, I had gotten us in Sky Mall magazine, and I was quite thrilled about that. So the other guy that did all the other packaging and stuff did everything else, all the retail orders, and I did those. So I said, yes, I did pack that box. They opened it up. Obviously, there was nothing in there but these beautiful candle towers that are gorgeous. So they took it back out to the UPS truck, and off it went. Anyway, long story short, after all of that, now I am in California. I now have no income because they froze everything. This magical relationship with my father is clearly no longer a possibility. And now I have to make a decision, right? I have to make a choice because we could go back to Minnesota in a heartbeat, back to our friends and family, and everything would, we could reintegrate very quickly. Or I could keep my promise to my baby girl. And so for me, that was the most important piece because there was so many generational through lines of breaking promises and not doing the things that parents, said that they were going to do. So we stayed in California and, several $100,000 in debt later, but she had a beautiful childhood and, I don't regret that in any way, shape, or form, but there was so much fear for me in the aftermath of that because, the DA, they were telling me like, we know you weren't a part of this, but, you're still in the mix and, you could lose Maddie. And I mean, just like the worst things you could ever say to a mom. So I went back to therapy, obviously, because I had to process and deal with this and get some help and support because I was so hurt and so sad and so angry. And it was during that time where, I was writing him letters, not sending them because classic narcissist, you don't feed the fire, right? But I was trying to process all of my feelings around all of it. And then it just felt like I was consumed by that heavy negative weight of either being so sad and devastated by this massive betrayal. And who could do that? Not only to me, but, to my daughter, my little girl. And then, or this like ragefully anger, just so angry. And so you can't be present to joy when you're consumed by all of that, right? It's just not possible. So after a bit, I kind of got to that point where I was like sick of the story. I was sick of talking about it. I was sick of telling it. It's like, I just don't want to talk. I just don't want to tell the story anymore. And then around that time, and I don't even remember who it was, but somebody introduced me to something that became kind of the basis of then what became my life's work. And in a matter of weeks, it was incredible, the parts of me that I didn't even recognize in all the best way. And that gave me the freedom to actually fully forgive my father, but he doesn't get a seat at the table. He doesn't get access to me. I haven't spoken to him in years. But that kind of forgiveness isn't about them anyway, right? It's not about making it okay or letting anyone off the hook. It doesn't mean that they get access to be in your life. It's just taking that kind of alchemical forgiveness taking it from that situation that was defining you to moving it into where it actually refines you. And that's when, because it's really about taking our power back. And I'm no longer going to allow you, person who hurt me, to have control over my thoughts and feelings and behaviors and actions. And it's just a very powerful thing. And I have a lot of clients who are very, very triggered by the word forgiveness because they've been so hurt by whatever situation. And they're like, why would I ever forgive him or her or whatever?
Yeah.
But it's that same old saying, right? You are drinking poison every day, wanting them to die. And that's not how it works.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. And when did you realize that your father was a narcissist? When did you get to that understanding?
Well, I wouldn't have known what that word was, but all my life it was clear to me that, when we would talk, he would call and he would say, how are you? But then I would maybe start to answer and then he would just go and talk about himself for 30 minutes. And then, so it was always about him, always, always, always. And big fantastical ideas and, oh, I'm doing this thing is going to be, this is amazing. It's going to take care of our whole family and generations to come. And we're going to change the world. And, all of these really big, huge, fabulous things that never ever came to fruition. So it was something that I experienced, my entire life, but I wouldn't have been able to name it.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you share with us, because you said mainly you're working with high achieving women who on the surface, they have it all. Yeah. So they are successful, but still they feel lost or they feel like they don't live in alignment. And what's the attribute to that?
So a lot of it is that we're operating, like our nervous system and all of our internal wiring is operating from somebody that maybe you were 20 years ago. And who you are now is not that same person. So it's kind of like If you have an iPhone, right, or whatever phone you have, they keep updating the operating system. And if you don't, then none of the apps work. Everything crashes. It all shuts down. There's all these error messages. It's the same with us from an unconscious, subconscious level. So oftentimes, 90% of who we are right now, we picked up between the ages of 0 and 7. So ironically, something happened and, little girl, 5-year-old you, something happened and you went, oh, in order to be loved, I have to earn it. I have to get all A's in school, or I have to be the best athlete, or I have to, or, in order for people to like me, I have to be quiet. So I'm going to make myself really small, or whatever it is. Right. And then these
Mhm.
decisions are made. And once those are anchored in, that then becomes then the blueprint for your, like, how you make decisions and your beliefs about yourself and all of those things. So as we go through life and we grow and we change, we are often operating on a very outdated, expired internal operating system. It's kind of like the other day, a couple weeks ago, I cleaned out my pantry. So I'm 49, perimenopausal, ADD. Like, I love organization and I love when everything has its place, but also things will pile up around me. And then I'll just be like, I got to shut the door. I can't deal with it. So I took everything out of my pantry. I was so excited. It took me 4 hours. I took it all out. I put it in the kitchen. I cleaned it all. I threw away all of these expired, stuff that's just sitting in there for years, half opened
Mhm.
boxes of pasta, whatever. And then I put it all back in bins, and it was just, it made me feel like Christmas morning. Like, I opened the pantry and I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's the same, right? If we don't throw out all the old expired stuff and get rid of all the stuff that's not meant for us or useful anymore, there's no room for what is. Just like with if your
Yeah.
closet, it's full of old clothes that you're never going to wear again, but you think, well, maybe I will wear that someday, and you just keep it. Well, then there's no room for that new great pair of shoes that you love, or that, whatever. So
Yeah.
it's the same.
And it's easy to say that, okay, we need to let go of these outdated systems and clothes and so on, things within our life and our environment. But when we get to that place of actually doing it, it's actually quite hard. And I've been through many, many processes of letting go, including right now. I've just sold everything I had in the States. Like, I literally
Mm,
sold my life there. And 2 months, I went through like deep grief of
mhm,
letting go of that old self, letting go of that old life. And I was noticing how there is so much attachment that we
mhm.
have, including to physical things, to material things. It's like, oh my God, but I received this from I don't know who, and oh, I bought this there, and we never use them, but we still like hoard them and we collect them. And I know, because I've learned that even in our environment, those things, they clutter our mind, they clutter our energy, but still it's quite hard to let go. So how do you start with that process? And I would say, especially with the not so obvious things, yes, the
Yeah.
outdated operating system within ourselves, the beliefs, actions, and so on that we have. How do we start on that process of letting go, so we create the space for the new programming that is more in alignment with who we want to become?
Yes. Great question. So I think before we answer that, I want to just talk about the difference between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So if we think about our body, everything from the neck up is our conscious mind. So it's our critical faculties, it's all the things that we know, it's our goal setter. We use it all day long. It's 10%, which means everything from the neck down, the other 90%, is our unconscious mind. So if the conscious is our goal setter, the unconscious is actually the goal getter. That is the operating system. That is the general. And most importantly, in my opinion, it's also the literal library of everything we've ever experienced in our entire life, held at a cellular level, right? We think about memory being in the brain, which of course it lives in the circuitry, but memory, as we know, is cellular. And what happens when we don't release that properly, then we see things manifest in the body, like anxiety, depression, overwhelm, autoimmune disorders, illness, injury, disease, right? So with quantum time release, we're able to do that in a painless, peaceful way. But if you think about negative emotions, and if you think about every single one has its own piece of ribbon, right? So anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, and then all of those limiting beliefs or limiting decisions that we have, decided, made up about ourselves. And every time in our life, when we have a significant emotional experience with anger, for instance, a marble goes on that ribbon. Sadness, a marble goes on the sadness ribbon. Shame, shame goes on the shame ribbon. And the thing is that if something happens today and makes you sad, it's not so much about the thing today as it is the 30, 40, 50, 60 years of marbles behind it. It's the gestalt. It's the sum is greater than the parts. That's the charge that we hold on to at a cellular level in our body. And with quantum time release, we get to release all of that without going back into any conscious memory that caused the pain or trauma in the first place. So it's painless and peaceful. And we get to actually release all of that, transmute it, get the soul learnings of who you really are so we can re-anchor that in. And then we get to future pace and start to create new neurology around new relationships with those emotions going forward. So yes, we're human. We're still going to experience anger and sadness and fear and guilt and shame. We're not going to have a lobotomy. But the thing is that the old charge of everything behind it is gone. And what's so magical is in that process, because it's a completely unconscious process. Now, that doesn't mean you're unconscious. You're just very chill and zen and comfy, but we're tapping into the unconscious mind to get those answers. And in between each release, I will say to you, okay, now I want you to actually go back to a specific event in the past. Whether it was yesterday or 40 years ago, doesn't make a difference, where that emotion used to be a problem. And I want you to check and see if it still has a charge. Though, you might realize that it doesn't. And this is where people go, whoa, if you would have asked me that 2 hours ago, I would have been tears and I would have felt like tightness in my chest, or my hands would have gotten clammy, or my heart would have been racing, or I would have gone straight back into the anger. And they're like, the charge is gone. Like, it's like, yeah, it happened. And then we start to create new neurology by future pacing and saying, if you go out to an unspecified time in the future, where if it had happened in the past, there would be unwarranted or inappropriate anger. And that's really important because we don't want people to bypass emotion and think this is about toxic positivity and that you're not going to experience those things. So for them to say, well, if something had happened in the past around that, I would have just been like taking it on and I would have felt so shamed. And so I'm like, so tell me what happens instead. Well, I realized that there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, this is not mine to carry. It wasn't there was nothing to be ashamed of. So we start creating that new neurology so that going forward, all of that charge and those triggers are gone. So when all of that is released, then we get to actually call in what's meant for us in our life, because most of the time we're so focused on everything we don't want. That's why people continue to get over and over again, end up in the same relationships, the same money situations, the same health stuff, the same dynamics at work. And they go, I've done all this work. I've been in therapy for years. I've been to the retreats in Costa Rica. I've done all the things. Why is it that I just get triggered, right? And then I go right back to the old stuff. Well, because the unconscious mind can't fill in the blank. So if you're going to blow out old strategy and behavior and neurology, if you don't replace it with something else, the unconscious mind has to go back to only that which it knows, which is all the dysfunction.
So from what I understand from what you just shared, Riana, that is very important to make the replacement. Yes, for example, to replace the old system, the old beliefs of whatever was creating shame, and to replace it with something empowering. Because you are saying if we are not going to replace it, then the old programming is just going to come back up because we need to act or react in a certain way.
Right? Because what else are we going to do? It's kind of like if we were in the garden and there was a bunch of weeds or dandelions and we just took the little top off and threw it away, it's going to grow right back. It's the same kind of concept of if we keep trying to do it the same way, right? We're going to talk about it some more, or we're going to read another book, or we need to learn another skill, then we're just going to keep getting those weeds. So we got to tap into that other 90% so we can actually get those insights and get that clearing for you. Because at the end of the day, the truth is you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. You just can't. And so, so many heart-led, ambitious women, they're like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I just figure this out or snap out of it? Or, why can't I just, let go of this stuff? And it's like, look, you are emotionally intelligent, brilliant, incredible, extraordinary human being. If you could have figured this out on your own, you would have, right? So let go of the, the judgment and the blame on yourself that you should be able to figure this out, because that's not how it works. And so the access to be able to tap into the unconscious and do that rewiring gives us, like, the ability to do this in such a fast, painless, peaceful way that doesn't drag on for months and years. It's literally weeks. And
Mm.
it's an incredible gift to give yourself, but it's not only for you, right? It's for your family, your children, your grandchildren, your community, because when that shift happens in you, it affects everybody around you.
Yeah. And so, from what you're sharing, are you telling us that, okay, the only way or the way for people to clear this old programming is to actually work with somebody, or they can actually also achieve that on their own? Because you just shared, okay, these high achieving women, they have done everything, tried everything, all the modalities and so on, but nothing truly worked. So are you telling us that in order for you to access your subconscious mind and release this programming, you would need a support from someone outside?
Yeah. I mean, we can do all the vision boards and all the affirmations and all those things, which are wonderful. But if we don't actually deal with it from an internal wiring perspective, from an operating system perspective, it's just going to be a Band-Aid. Now, there are things that I teach my private clients. There are things that I can share with your listeners right now that they can actually start to make massive change in their life. And I'm happy to share that. And that's a start, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if you to do the deeper work, you can't really tap into that on your own.
So would you say, even for yourself,
Yeah.
that you work with other people that help you tap in that
Oh, of
subconscious?
course. Of course. I have my coaches, my strategists, my consultants, so because I can't do that for myself either. I mean, well, no, it's not possible. There's a lot of things you can do, but that kind of energetic, multidimensional work, you can't do it for yourself. And not to say that the only path to getting clear so you can create and claim is doing that, but it's certainly the fastest and the longest lasting. So many people, like you said, you do all the things, you try all the things, and then you still end up stuck or still end up in the same relationships over and over again, or the same situations. And it's not for lack of trying or seeking. Like, you've done all this incredible work, which is great, because I don't work with women who are just like in the crisis place that haven't done any of the work. You got to do some of the work, and then you come and work with me and we clear it out. But when we look at the methodology versus the process, right? So the methodology is clear to create. And the reason for that is my kind of tagline in life has always been your very best life. Whether we've been best friends for 25 years or we met yesterday, I want you to live your version of your very best life. And it's different for every single one of us. But the truth is you cannot go from being, stuck in old stuff and story and trauma and loss and childhood stuff and all the things to just living your very best life. It doesn't work like that. So first,
Mm-hmm.
we have to clear the story to create the life, right? You want a different story, you got to stop telling the old one.
Yeah.
You get stuck in that story and the drama, and that is an absolute guarantee that you're never going to actually get what you want in this life. And we have to clear the cycles to create the confidence. Most of my clients come to me and they're super smart, brilliant people, and they're like, I don't trust myself to make a decision because I don't know what is the right decision, because I thought I knew. And look how that turned out, right? I lost the
Mm-hmm.
marriage or the business or whatever it is. And so there's this sense of like, I don't know, is that a red flag, or am I just so like biased and picky now because I don't want to get hurt again? Or is this the right decision, and is it not the right decision? And so we're going to teach you how to make values-driven decisions so that you can have a clean yes and a clean no, and powerfully choose from that space instead of getting caught in the middle, which is where all of I call it the devil, it's the maybe. It's where all of the drama and the friction and the noise and the decision fatigue comes from not being able to trust ourselves. And then we either make a decision on old stuff based off fear, usually, or we don't make any decision at all because we just get paralyzed by the fact that we don't know the answer. We can't
Yeah.
trust ourselves. So we have to clear those cycles to create that confidence again. And we have to clear the patterns to create the partnerships, right? We want aligned, rich, beautiful partnerships, romantically, professionally, personally, friends, family. But when we just bring all the same old patterns, you don't get those partnerships. You just continue to get more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to clear the loss to create the love. So that's kind of the methodology. And then the how is the quantum pattern protocol, which is really the framework of those 3 phases of how we do that, which is clearing, creating, and claiming. But it's critical to understand that before we can clear anything, we have to get clear. And I find this to be one of the biggest, most interesting things with almost 90, probably 95% of the women that I work with. So we'll start having a conversation about kind of where you are and what you're experiencing. And then I'll say, okay, great. So on the other side of this work, when you're not stuck anymore, or whatever their words are, what are you doing or not doing differently than you're doing or not doing right now? What lights you up? What does that life look like? And oftentimes in that moment, then it brings tears. And I get a lot of, I don't know how to answer that question. I have spent my whole life putting everybody else first. I was a mom, a wife in my career, taking care of, elderly parents, siblings, whatever. And so many people will say, I don't know what that, I don't even know what that is. I don't even know who I am really at this point. Like, who am I now that I'm not a wife or a mom or whatever? And so getting that really, really crystal clear is the first piece. So it's kind of like if you and I went into a cafe and we sat down and the server came and said, what can I bring you? And we said, well, we will have a beverage, a protein, a salad, and a side. And they bring us a water, a pork chop, some carrots, and a Caesar salad. We got exactly what we asked for, exactly what we ordered. But what we wanted was a glass of sangria and a nice piece of salmon and some roasted asparagus and a arugula salad with fresh figs and goat cheese, right? So the difference, we got exactly what we ordered, not what we wanted. And that is probably one of the biggest things that I see over and over and over again in women that are, they are smart and they are ambitious and they are heart-led and they are connected in and very self-aware, but they're not clear. And so until we can get you clear, that's the first piece. And then we can get rid of all the stuff that doesn't serve you. And then we can create the life and love that's meant for you. And then we can claim it in a way that you get to own it, where you actually don't need any other external permission anymore. And this is, really where you fall in love with yourself again and really trust yourself and confidently hold boundaries and communicate your needs expertly and deepen the richness in every single one of your relationships. And then we get to integrate that into your energy, your decision, your relationships, your world. And then you get to embody her and you get to live and love and lead from this new frequency where you just get to magnetize with grace. And it's just a very different experience than being stuck in that kind of that space of feeling like you never actually move forward.
So what would be some of the evidence, some of the proof that women are stuck? Maybe they don't even know. Yes, but that they are stuck right now into living and creating their most abundant and authentic life.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to making the invisible visible first, because when you don't know, when you can't name it, you can't do anything about it, right? So really getting clear about what's going on and what's underneath that, which we do kind of at the very, very beginning. And that is a lot of uns and lesses: unworthy, powerless, hopeless, unloved, unlovable, everybody leaves me, like whatever the things are that's underneath all of that. But a lot of the indicators are things that we've kind of touched on. I have done all this work and I wake up in the morning and I kind of just dread going on with my day. Or I think that it's too late for me. Every relationship that I go into, I think, okay, this is going to be great. And it's always the same thing. It's always the same type of person or the same circumstances, and it never works out. Or that sense of like, I know there's more meant for me in my life. I don't know what that is. And I sure as heck don't know how to get there. So it's kind of a little bit different for everybody, but there are common things. And a lot of it is people that say, how did I get here again? How did I get here again? I swore I'd never get here again. I swore I'd never be in this position again. And yet here I am. And that really starts with where your focus is. which starts with, what are you thinking about?
So what do you focus on? Where you place your attention on?
Right. So if we have time, I'd love to give the listeners a little activity they could, like something they could do like right now to make a huge difference in their life. So there's something so my values as a person and for my business are love, generosity, impact, the belief in what's possible, and being a magnet for miracles. And that's my favorite thing to teach. So when we're a magnet for miracles, then, it's of course, there's always a parking spot up front for me when it's raining. Everywhere I go, people are so kind and generous, and magical things happen all around me, right? Versus, there's never a parking spot. Of course, my car broke down. Of course, I'm stuck in traffic. This always happens to me, right? It's a very different frequency. It's a very different energetic vibe. Now, because we think between 70 and 85,000 thoughts every day, and 90% of those thoughts are recycled, they're the same thoughts that we thought yesterday and the day before, and in the middle of the night, and last week, and last month, and last year probably. And the issue with that is 75% of those thoughts are negative. And I will tell you, I get a huge amount of pushback when I first share that with people, because they're like, no, my mindset is so good. Like, I am rock solid on mindset. I am clear. I will never put up with that again. And I am this and that and the other. But here's the thing. We don't really realize, because the way that our brains are wired, we're mostly focused on the fact that I don't want something, right? I don't ever want to be in a relationship again where I'm not just cherished and adored. I don't ever want to be in a relationship again where I don't feel like I can trust them. So I'm always like feeling unsafe. I don't want to be in this freaking debt. I don't want to go to this job that I hate. I don't want this extra weight on my body, whatever it is. But the unconscious mind and the universe, it can't hear the clarifying don't. All it knows is what you're really focused on. It's like if you use Google Maps or your navigation system in your car, you put the address in and it's like, that's where we're going. And the car gives us the directions and off we go. Every single time we declare something that we're focused on, we're uploading that into our nav system, and that's where we're going to go, to all the things we don't want. And so we can start with a practice that it's really about becoming a magnet for miracles. And so I would say to everyone, I'd like you to get 2 clean pieces of paper, and on the top of one, write away, and on the top of the other, write toward. And you're going to imagine that these are walls in a room. So if you're sitting in a room, there's a wall to your left, to your right, in front of you, behind you. And I want you to just like close your eyes for a second, unless you're driving, and imagine if there was a wall that's your away wall. And on your away wall are all those things that you don't want. Everything you don't want. Not again, not ever, not more of. And I want you to just tell me, or tell yourself, like, where is that wall? Is it to your left, to your right, in front of you, behind you? Like, where would yours be? Where would your away wall be?
On my left.
Okay. And then I want you to imagine that on your toward wall is everything you want for yourself in your life. Magic wand, fairy dust, goals, wishes, dreams, hopes, desires. Where's that wall for you?
It's in front of me.
Okay, beautiful. So now on those pieces of paper, I want you to write down on that away list all the things you don't want. And on the toward list, all the things that you do. And for the next 72 hours, we're going to play a game. So you're going to wear a rubber band, and it has to be a stinging one, like from The Office, like not a scrunchy, soft one that we put in our hair and sleep at night, but like one that when you snap it stings. And for 72 hours, you're going to play full out. And every single time you find yourself in you're like spinning out and you're anxious, or you're like having those thoughts that are just, in the negative, like, I want you to snap that rubber band hard enough so it hurts, so we get the pattern interrupt in the brain, and then we're going to replace it with a better feeling thought. So how you do it is, you notice that's happening, you snap the rubber band. I want you to say, okay, what was I thinking about? And you'll notice that every single time it's something on that away wall list. And then how do you replace it? Well, you either pick something from the toward wall list and you visualize it with all the senses as though it is. You can literally take 30 seconds and just sit in authentic gratitude for something that you are truly grateful for. And if you're still feeling yucky, then I want you to ask yourself, who can I serve in this moment? And it doesn't have to be a big grand gesture, right? It can literally be a thought or a prayer for someone, or a text to a girlfriend that says, love you, have a great day. or your neighbors, stuff is flipped, their garbage can fell over and there's stuff all over, you just pick it up for them. Just get out of your own head and do something in service of someone else. And it's the fastest way. But here's what you'll notice. The first day, you might not notice it hardly at all because it's such an unconscious process. We are not aware of it. So you might go a whole day and have just feel off in your body, and you feel anxious and your chest feels tight, or you have a pit in your stomach, and you just notice that, you're just feeling, ugh. I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night and you go, oh, okay, snap it. What was I thinking about? Okay, got it. Then the next day, it might be that, a couple hours go by and then you're like, oh, yes, I snap it. And then it's an hour, and then it's 30 minutes. And the point of this is not to not feel these things or have these thoughts or emotions. It's to get yourself out of it as fast as you can. So ultimately, by the end of those 72 hours, within minutes, you should be able to recognize that, snap it, choose a better feeling thought, raise that frequency and vibration. And because we only have to hold a thought with intense emotion for 17 seconds for it to either create or reinforce the neural pathways in the brain. Again, the navigation system. So when we flip the focus, then everything around us starts to change, because then now the people, the experiences, the resources, the opportunities that we want in our life start showing up, because that's what we're focusing on. And that's just, universal law. But that's one thing that you could do right now. And I promise you, if you do that for 72 hours, because we know scientifically we can actually rewire that part of the brain in 72 hours, then you will see everything around you start to shift. And it's that simple and that complex, but it really is. I mean, that's where it all begins.
Wow, I love it. And it takes me also to the idea that things don't have to be hard. They don't have to be complicated in order for us to really create a shift. And you said there something that really struck with me. You said that we only have to hold the thought for 17 seconds to create a new neural pathway. Yes. And that's for me is mind blown, even though I've studied NLP as well. And I know a lot of these things too, but there are reinforcements, reminders, and things that we forget about.
Yes, of course.
It's wow, just 17 seconds. And that can go with any thought. No, it's what do you focus on? Do you focus on on your away, on your towards list? And the idea through the exercise you shared, it's constantly to refocus towards the what do you desire list. And that's how we create a new neural pathways.
Absolutely. Harvard just did a huge study over the course of quite a few years, and they just released it. And what they found was what you focus on, what you're thinking about, has far more effect on your quality of life than what actually happens. So if you're somebody that in constant dread and thinking the worst coming and worrying about things that you have no control over that may never ever happen, your quality of life is going to be significantly lower, no matter if just everything fabulous continues to happen, because the power of the mind and what we're focused on and what we're thinking literally is the determining factor for the life that we live.
For what you experience, for how you feel. And it reminds me of a story from a mentor that I've learned from. And he was saying this: whenever we have an experience, once you label it, it's going to dictate how you feel about it. So when you say, oh, this is bad, then that's how you're going to experience it. If you say it's good, that's how you're going to experience it. So his approach was to actually bring in the curiosity and just say, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And just leave it as who knows, curiosity. Do not label it, because once you label it, that's when the suffering starts happening.
And the other thing I would love to say about suffering is, the human condition is suffering is a choice. Because the only time that we actually suffer is when we argue with reality. So we desperately want a person or a situation or a circumstance to be different than it is. That's why we suffer. If we looked at the person or the situation and just said, you know what, this is who they are and this is what this is, it's acceptance. There's no suffering. But we want it to be different. We want them to be different. We want the circumstances to be different. And that's arguing with reality. And that's what causes suffering. And so even if you can just recognize that piece and go, this person is who they are, not who I wish they were. Now, you still get to like decide if you want them in your life or whatever, but when you can realize that, again, it takes away like that everything's happening to you and that life is against you versus everything's happening for you, and you get to own it. Like you have choice.
Yeah, so it's actually accepting what is instead of resisting it, instead of resisting what life presents to you. And once you get to accept it, you change your experience with actually what's alive in your life.
And also, I would caution that that's different than when people say, well, it is what it is. Because
And don't do anything about it.
Right. And it is what it is just number one, it's a cop out. And number two, I would say that, again, there's a distinction, because one of the things that I believe fully is just because something has always been a certain way, it does not have any indication on that it always has to be that way. You can literally change that right now. So people get in that is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. I have no power. No, you actually do. And part of that is let's be real about what the situation actually is. And are we able to name that and be clear about it? And that's who they are, or that's what it is. And we get to decide how we respond or what we do next versus just this kind of shadow archetype of victimhood of like, there's nothing I can do. Everyone's out to get me. The world hates me all the time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation, Riana. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and how you can support women, because you work with women. And regarding that, would you say you work mainly with women that they are single or they're in relationships, or it doesn't matter their status?
Doesn't matter.
What it matters is that they desire to realign and to live their best life.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of just, I think just demographically, a lot of women that I work with are maybe they've gotten divorced, or they're going through a divorce, or they're in a marriage that doesn't feel, they're just unhappy and there's just no connection or fulfillment. But I also have a lot of women that come to me that has nothing to do with that. But the beautiful thing about this work is it's not like, oh, it's love coaching or business coaching or health coaching. We rewire all of it so it affects every area of your life. But yeah, so that piece makes absolutely no difference. But all my work is private, so it's not a group program. There's no group.
So it's only one-on-one that you work with your clients.
It's really, we co-create together, and I design each one. I mean, the framework of my work and my IP, of course, is the same, but it's a little bit different for each person because every person is a little different.
Yes, I can totally relate to that, because I've done a lot of one-on-one work throughout this year since I've been on this path. And yeah, everyone needs a different guidance, different direction. And the group coaching, the group programs have their purpose for different things.
Yes.
I would say it's a different expansion than the work that you shared that you are doing. And it sounds like a beautiful work. And I highly encourage those that are listening to reach out to you, connect with you, and get in touch. If this has resonated, send us a message, a DM with what has been your biggest insight, your biggest takeaway. I would love to hear from you.
I would love to just close with a gift for your listeners. So I've created a diagnostic called the ELLI, which is the Extraordinary Love Index. And it answers the question of what's standing between you and extraordinary love. And that doesn't just mean romantic love. That starts with right here, right? But it looks at like 9 key areas, and it's a legit diagnostic. So it's not a Disney princess quiz or, what ice cream flavor are you? It's 40 questions. So I would give yourself a good 10, 15 minutes where you can actually thoughtfully answer them. And then what I'm going to do is send you a 28-page personalized report breaking down all of those areas for you with real life, like, here's what you might be experiencing or feeling. Here's the cost of staying there. Here's something that you can look at to try to start to shift that. And it's just brilliant insight for, every human in the world should take it. So it's up on the website. It's in the Instagram, rianamalia.com. So go take the L and get that insight for you about where you are and what might be, maybe a blind spot for you of like, oh, that's why I feel this way, or that's why this kind of communication just always hurts my feelings, or whatever it is. But so I really would invite everybody to go take the Ellie as my gift.
That sounds amazing. I will do it as well.
Good.
And thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your beautiful insights and your wisdom with all of us. And
Of
thank you to
course.
everyone who tapped in and who listened, who stayed with us for the duration of this conversation. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, Riana.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in to Spiritual Changemakers podcast. To stay connected and help us reach more people like you, please subscribe, follow, and leave a comment. Join our community of spiritual changemakers on social media to connect with like-minded individuals and continue the conversation. Remember, the power to create positive change is within you. Keep showing up as your best self, and let's keep the magic of change alive. Until next time.